Okay, I'm back live again. I need someone to give me audio feedback. I think I've got everything turned on. I forgot my headset in my haste. I went through to charge my headset to be a little bit proactive, and that's the problems I've encountered on my channel lately. Besides being a little bit rushed, is that when I went to sit down and record a a video the other day. Right as I sat down, I had a static electricity spark knock out my microphone permanently. I've had that happen before, that it's just a momentary thing. I've got another headset, wired headset on order, the same as I have. And I don't think it's damaged the speaker side or the USB connection for it, so I'll have like a spare for that. It seems like it only damaged the microphone. And as I was talking, I got worried, and I went through and I put the P370 adapter away back in a static shield, just to make sure that that I don't have anything happen to damage it. I can pull it out and show it again, and I'm not trying to be contentious here. I'm not trying to add any fuel to the fire. I'm just doing what was requested, and I'm going through and working. I didn't have any audio on the earlier stream where I went through and tried to explain this as well. But all I am trying to do, and this is I'm work with Kevin Bowling. There's a little bit of interaction on the SIF news group. Kevin and I had chatted on the phone a couple days ago based on something that was happening, and we were able to respond very well to that. But we did bring up, and we did think about that I had the P370 adapter that we would like to get operational as well. Kevin is actually using, I had a P390 adapter as well, even before this fantastic transaction came up, that we're able to go through and get the base card without the memory. But I have a P390 adapter with the additional memory daughter card, microchannel in that case, and I got that a number of years ago. Kevin has probably had that. When I located, he asked, "Can I go through and can I get this set up and use this?" And I worked on arrangements to where I got the card into his hands. He's got it. He's been working with it probably for a matter of a couple of years. I'd have to look back through the transactions to understand when exactly that was. But and he's a brilliant guy in that regard. He's got the setup. He's got the ability to go through and to work with all that himself. Although I have any possible hosts that we would need to get this other adapter set up. Okay, I'm just reading text, and that's by via email. Just another friend giving me an update as well on possibilities. And so, I'm going through and stating that I'm not trying to be difficult as well. Our intentions are to get this P370 adapter in a working system. We have everything but license code to get it operational. And that is what we are looking for. And to get that back into an operational setting for what the card was intended. So I just don't have it in this, in this pretty wrapper. I jokingly say that I even on the earlier video, if the current paper was needed to show the date and everything else. This is our local paper that I just picked up. And of course, you can see all the clutter behind me. I was a little bit going through, and of course, I've, we can even take this and work with this. I can go as live as possible, as long as possible. I was always thinking of an angle in the last few weeks of how to address the IBM mainframe and mini side, which I'm a member of that Facebook group as well. And I'll probably go through and, I might even see if we can get, I think I only have one watcher right now, and I might even know who that is. But I can provide links to this video, and certainly I can do it afterwards in playback as well. Although I'd like to get some feedback, but I've been working for weeks because I want to get, and my background is, and some other arrangements I'm trying to work with Kevin as well, is I have a total of 4 System 34, what they call mini computer systems. And if you see a IBM System 34, and I think it's like a 5340 is the main unit of it. These are not mini computers. They call them mini computers because they're smaller than a mainframe computer. But the things are probably a good 4 foot tall, 2.5 feet wide, 8 foot long. It's an entire cabinet. In fact, for part of it back in the day, I thought, wow, it'd even go through and host a lot of computer motherboards or something else to be, because the power supply is one whole segment of the machine. And the System 34 was actually relatively the low end. They had the System 32, and of course they had the System 23, the Data Master that kind of took off from the 5120, and those are standalone units. And then by the time they got to the System 34, it was, I think, 16 terminals that could, and I have a number of terminals. I call those hernia terminals, because if you try and carry one of those things, it will give you a hernia. And I even have a 5250, or at least one 5252. And that's the Janus, that's the double header terminal. On each side of that box, it has a screen with a keyboard that you can attach, and those Beamspring keyboards. And, I'm not going to talk about the people that are trying to get those Beamsprings and connect them up for whatever reason to a retro PC, or go through and even use the terminal body as that kind of a hidden sleeper system or something like that. My terminals, my keyboards, the stuff that I've collected are going to stay with that functionality. But my intention is to get at least half of those, maybe a couple of units if Kevin has the room where he's at. And I'm just looking for the thought of the link into the mainframe system. And I have some of the connectivity for that side as well. Some of the units that go through and do that. I've got even 3 floor standing printers. I think they're like the 5324 with the band, and those things, you have that super wide of columnar tractor fed paper that it just can go through and print just like crazy. But I'm just looking for that in kind of a functional setting of what those systems are designed from. And those came out in 1977. I never really got my hands on a true System 36. And then the System 38s were a vast number of terminals, and they were that could be set up. And I've never even I don't even know if I've seen the base units for those or anything like that as well. But two of my model System 34s are the 10 disc magazine types. You have those 8-inch floppies and can go through. And I'd always heard trivia, and I've spoken at times. I may have to follow it up sometimes. That I always heard that the format of those 8-inch floppy diskettes was 1.2 megabyte, just like the AT got later on. That IBM basically sized down from the 8-inch to the 5.25-inch diskette type for that density, is how they derived the 1.2 format. I don't know if that's true. A lot of the drive controller, that 8272 chip or equivalent, is the same, the FDC, but I don't know, recording methods and everything else, if that's all equal. To get back to the topic, and two of them, or half of the System 34s I have, are the single diskette models. I think I have two diskettes that are single, but it's a nice between kind of half and half of when that model has a more elaborate diskette magazine. And I have a lot of manuals and everything else. And my intent to go through on that, and I'm trying to work on a deal right now to get a floor standing copy machine multicolor. That I'm mostly interested in the scanning abilities, the scan to PDF, and get that documentation. Now we can go through. Anyone watching the chat, I mean, I understand that I don't really have that many subscribers. I need to get a link out there and see if I can pull people in. Also, I'm interested in feedback on the channel. And as you know, I've gone through and adapted. I had one about the comment that I've had that really was the most critical to me. I had one video of a comment that it says it was just, and I think it was on the diskette drives, external diskette drives, and he says that the person said that is just painful to watch. It's painful to watch you stuttering and stammering and going through and all these awkward pauses and everything else, and you should consider scripting. And I've gone through and I've tried to enable that. I'm trying to go through for another request or another constructive criticism to go through and segment the videos that have that timeline on the, at least in the comments, to show when I'm going through, working through like the Model 56 and 57 video. This is the time I look at this planer. This is the time I look at this planer, and those nice little segmented bands down at the bottom that you can go through when you watch the video. And understand, I've got for all that, and for all the technology and the involvement I've done otherwise, I know some material, and I've forgotten a lot of stuff over time. I'm to the point in my life what I'm trying to do is pull people into this wonderful hobby, this wonderful community of people, that we can even have a condition that where someone offers and says, hey, I've got a bunch of these free adapters, these high-end pieces that I'm willing to give for the price of shipping to anyone. First come, first serve, but also had the idea of someone being able to put those in a functional setting, a museum saying, or get those adapters back to work in the by what they're intended for. And thankfully I was able to get into to part of that, and that's my intent as well, to go through and have that community, have the go through and display these machines, whether it's virtually or provide documentation, information, all the stuff over the years that the PS2 community has had in that news group that is varied over time and has been, in this day and age, really it's a different sort of format. It's not a Facebook format, but it's, we get to in some cases where people are not going to choose to be on Facebook to participate in the community and things like that. But ultimately, I'm just trying to bring people in. I'm trying to do the documentation to show what a crazy fun hobby this is, and go through. And there's just loads of content that I can do. And by all means, I don't have a corner on this market. I dropped into this because I saw other friends doing the videos before, and have done the videos for a matter of a very long time, a dozen years or sometimes more, of going through and having less videos available. And so I'm wanting to go through there and jump in and provide that. And I'm wanting to help out. I've been seeing a lot of videos too, and of people that are not as familiar with the microchannel systems. And what we try and do is to point people to the right reference places, to Louis Olin's collection of what he has accumulated of that wealth of the comp.sys.ibm.ps2.hardware news group, SIF, that all that knowledge of Peter Wendt, the IBM engineer in Germany, and so many international members that still have that loose association. A lot of us are gather on Facebook. I go through and provide the links for that to if people like those mediums, to be able to join us there and to see that content. But we always point to those that accumulation of knowledge that we've built in over decades and contributed. And it's wild for me to go through and to see a video up. In fact, I saw a video from someone that I have chatted with on Facebook and everything else. He went through and created a group for just specifically the MAL 25s and MAL 30s, those levels of the being based on the 8086 or 286, or in the case of the MAL 25, the 386 SX. But me watching one of his videos that he had up, and probably not being aware of who I was at the time or anything else, in his video he does shows a web page, and it differs in kind of a fade in or fade out, a kind of or fade back, I guess, is how it does, or zooms out from the page, but my name being visible in that, and realizing, for being recognized as or attributed for the information I provided on that page. And one of the really things that's amazed me as well, so I'm going informal, I'm just kind of stepping back, we're having a fireside chat from that open discussion, or that focused discussion earlier. And a lot of what I did over time with my systems, that I was lucky enough, and at the peak of eBay time, where these parts started becoming available, and in some cases I gathered things that I didn't immediately use. In fact, I've stored away a lot of it. And I had the occasion to where if I saw something that was, and I wasn't in competition with the rest of the community, that most everybody I knew around me was cool with it, and I had the resources, I bought items. And I went through and just in the thought of getting those items and adding to what I had, in the thought that eventually I would go through and I'd be able to use it, I'd be able to document it, I'd be able to dig into that adapter. And I documented a lot of that, my day-to-day activities on that SIF news group. And I'm amazed. And it's a little bit of it is sometimes I feel weird. I read what I posted those years ago, and sometimes I even can't understand myself, or I feel that I'm wasn't concise enough at the time. I was like, what am I talking about here? The readability is sometimes a little bit of a challenge. And the SIF news group was a community in itself, and we even developed particular terms, fun and games, to say, with Peter Wentz involvement in the news group, to joke around and say that we sent, kind of the pronunciation of his last name thrown into, so SNDT, using that as a word that we sent an adapter to another community member, just in an interior joke of, that play on words. And so it was a close community, and internationally, it gave me that international perspective. I was traded with other members. I've done even recent trades that I'll have on another video of train something I picked up years ago, and I never even plugged it into a system. Wytech 4167 coprocessor or processor, numeric processor, and another friend was looking for something like that, and he had what I needed, and we did a straight across trade. So there's always been that nice community. But me going through, and the other side of me going through and seeing my old comments on SIF, and as scary as that is in a way, like say in the readability and everything else, I documented a lot of my day-to-day stuff. And I told when I got particular adapters, when I got, and even for all that, just to bring it up again, and yes, I have it in the nice static shielding now. It's safe from the site charges. I've got spray, and I need to go through and spray that down. They've even got an anti-static spray that I have that I can go through and use. And you see, oh, that's screen cleaning. I don't know why I have screen cleaning. I also got an anti-static spray somewhere around here. Who knows where, but the I need to go through that, and I need to, for the winter time, and it's bad in New Mexico is where I'm at, and it's a nice environment a lot of time. I'm really cluttered, as you can see behind me. I'm working through, but we have a thing with humidity, and in the summertime in particular, we don't have refrigerated air that we run down here in the Southwest. We run swamp coolers. We add moisture to cool the air and to add that moisture in the air. And I probably have the spray bottle around here somewhere where I can spray water in the air. And this is my dad's old shop. It's even where you can get noises. The acoustics that are in here are not real good. I've gone through and cleaning his old shop and trying to go through for the nights. We're going to start having that a little bit of a chill set in down here, and I've been using in the past even a propane heater assembly because I can't get the pellet stove in here working as well. Once I get the pellet stove in here, what we do is we also set a bucket of a pan of water on top of that, or like our fireplaces, and that will steam off and also add a little bit of moisture in the air. I don't want to get it too moist for computer items, but to add the moisture in the air so I don't have the static. And the bad thing is I even wear these Crocs, and I kind of slippers as it is, and I say, don't judge me. And I do that because I have a super wide foot, and those are bad with the static as well. That's what builds me up. But I touch the bottom of my metal chair to kind of discharge that charge that can start working off, that I have to be more concerned with now. I'm going to go through and I'm going to read some of the comments because I know. Okay, reminiscing. I'm reminiscing a lot here. And then RetroTech Chris is also saying hello, friend, and hi, Chris. And he's the one that he noticed that the other time of me having the video with no audio. And that was the time, like I say, I go through, I do a sound check, and that went through fine. I had gotten out of the chair for some reason. I sat back down, and I just remember I had a spark, and I didn't go through and I didn't further check my microphone from there. So it's dead, and so that knocked out the audio, and I was rushed after I did the video. The only time that I didn't go through and actually review at least a little portion of that video before I uploaded it, and sure enough, I didn't have audio. And it threw me in a way beyond other things I have had in my schedule the last couple of days. And it's not necessarily been bad news or anything that's pulled me away. But I've gone through at the start of the new year, I thought, wouldn't it be great? And I'm not trying to go through an elaborate production routine or anything like that. But I'm just trying to throw content out there, and I don't want to get too deep into it. I just want to give a little bit of a teaser in a way. Even a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute video would be great if I could hold it down to that time frame, and not so worried about throwing a lot of development into it or anything else like that. Just to being able to take a video of what I need to say, what I need to say, and upload it, and have people watch it and make comments and follow up if people want to get technical or want to provide more details or even correct me a lot of the time. I went through the video the other day, and I was talking about, I think for a lot of the 56 and 57, I misidentified the CPUs as PLCC, plastic leaded chip carriers. And when I was actually thinking of the correct term as they are the plastic quad flat pack. PQ FP is normally what those chips are. But I can have people correct me, and I mean, they understand what I mean in a lot of instances, and it's just it's one of those things of a little bit of grammar, but I can have errors creep into videos and stuff like that, and um, and also getting back, it's just a little bit of my nature, and I'm used to more of an online nature, or not a necessarily a live stream like this. I'm more used to type up an email, type it up with two fingers, as I was trying to say earlier, that you break two fingers and you ruin my ability to type. And I had to look at keys. I'm not just something I never picked up typing. And I have friends that I can just hear on those Model M keyboards, how heavily desired those things are. And I never picked up typing enough to save my life. I'm more deliberate and go through, and I can look and type, and I'm interested a lot of time in how I have that finished product, and to see what I've written now, or what I've tried to go through and uh, change my writing style in that format. Um, but so let's read some more comments here. And as it going on, and I wander around. You guys are aware how uh, even my yeah, they're saying right on, got the right approach, and I love hearing that feedback as well. And I didn't I didn't look at necessarily the approach right off, and I've heard that described as folksy, and that's fine. I'm folksy. And I wander around. I wonder, I don't stay on topic. And I can imagine how it is sometimes listening to me, um, or trying to make sense of the information I'm trying to present. That's why I'm going through the means of the teleprompter program, which is just excellent, and it can it can be used. And I intended the channel. I mean, we can go into other discussion of uh, what I'm looking for in the channel as well, and I want to have a little bit more widely varied things in there than necessarily IBM computers. In fact, I even want to address. I'm a big guy on pfSense. I've been on pfSense I've been on pfSense since I started running it on a dual Pentium 3 server back when it was 32-bit, which I think was 2.3. And I mean, it goes through and it doesn't change all that quick. We're on 2.4, and for the last year and a half, probably been waiting for 2.5 to come out, and the underlying FreeBSD to um, to be there, and an easy upgrade process with that. But I wanted to go through and even show what I do with the pfSense firewall in the context of like getting the older computers online, and showing how that can be set up, and the possibilities of even some of the things of the development that I'm thinking of as ways to react to diskette drives failing on PS2s, to being constrained by the size of local hard drive sizes, the amount of stuff that we can have on there, how much stuff can we cram on a reference diskette, a multi-system reference diskette. So there's some developments, and I'm going to go through, and I'm going to be releasing more details on that, because I have a lot more time to look at that. Getting back to me, another thing of me reading over the SIF news group, and it's just absolutely wonderful to me in a lot of regards, that I can see what I wrote, that I can place by time, even has where I've made comments on some of the topics on like the Facebook group and stuff like that, to say that hey, I just looked on the CIF and I made this comment 16 years ago. I was working on this and I said I would have it done soon. And a lot of the time on my comments, I talk about being pushed for time, not having enough time in my day to go through and do the things, my hobby, having to go through and be working. And it, as of a year ago, just over a year ago, worked for a place for 22 years, internet service provider. And I was their initial tech support. I was even in university going through for computer science, had someone go through the, come up to the school, go through the classroom, talk to the instructor. I'm looking for students that can bring on for tech support over at this ISP. And of course, that was 1997. I wasn't even internet enabled at that time. I was used dial-up modem. I worked with my dad to some of the computers he had for his small business, and a dial-up connection he had to his to one of his suppliers, and went through and set up Procom Plus. That's a big name back in the day for scripts. My dad, just like myself, very educated man and very made me who I am today for a lot of the mannerisms and everything else I had, the style I am, even though I had different hobbies. But he was also a two-fingered typist. And so I wrote Procom Plus scripts that all he had to do is, okay, Dad, here you press F1 key at this time. And I had that stuff written down, the classic notebook paper, press this button at this time. When you got your order all completed, press this key and press this key to disconnect. And I had even those scripts, and it gained into Procom Plus when he would do batch files of him booting up the system, just to make it as easy as possible for him to complete that task. And but I wasn't on the internet, and joined that company. And the guy that hired us and went in as I went through and had another individual along with me. We're kind of peers for a time at the business, but the guy that hired me quit a month later, and he had a lot of job security built into his what he did. With actually the Lotus 123 spreadsheet, and that was my first experience with some of that stuff too, as a way of having this data. And I even tell people the times that one time I went through and I worked a 16-hour day, and to get some of the data that I felt should be presented out there. And the very next day, I had my boss ask me, hey, I've been thinking about this data. I said, hey, I got it right here. So that kind of helped me in my premonition of doing that stuff. But the guy that joined with me left after a few months as well. And so I was the starting of that tech support angle. And I got online the internet, and it was just amazing. We had that Ethernet connection, Windows NT, from the office, and I learned I could get on eBay and I could snipe, and I started to get into it, and got into and discovered that online community for the in large regard, the PS2s is what we were focused around, and went through, and even at one point I got a 14.4 dial-up modem, and I thought I'd living in tall cotton with the upgrade I did from just being at 2400 BPS to, wow, I went to the 14.4 able to dial up, and that seemed fast for me at the time. And at home now, I have 600 megabit down and 15 megabit up, which normally translates to, and on my provider, to a 20 megabit upload. And so and that covers my household very good, um, for all our online activities and things like that. But um, long story short, I went through and the company, we eventually went through and created a NOC, and everything kind of unified. We went to the ADSL. We brought in a lot of other stuff, wireless links. We even went to where we got businesses and government places online for our area on fiber and things like that, and went all those modern things. And I kept up with all that technology for each step, and went through 22 years at that company. And it's been a year that I've been away from them. And I'm not, the one thing I didn't want to make the channel is political. I, even though I have political views that ooze out in some cases, and a lot of viewpoints that are relatively passionate for me that's held, those don't interface to computers for me. I want to keep the channel very apolitical, neutral, where I just, that doesn't get to be an issue. But I've been away from that company for a little bit over a year, and I've got back into the hobby almost immediately. I have, I see the things from my OneDrive and all my screen captures and things like that I did, even as soon as a year ago. And I was immediately starting to take pictures of components and throw myself at, now that I had the time, to get back in. Because in the last part of my job, for the last 2 years of that job, it meant a half-hour commute that I had to do to go to even a smaller town in the area, and that even didn't even have lunch places a lot of the time. You had to bring in your lunch and everything else for going there, and that's where we had our NOC, surprisingly, because that was the center of our network, even though it was very rural environment. And for a lot of that, for even just a half-hour commute and everything else, I was commonly away from home for more than 12 hours per day, more than half the day. When I left for work in the morning, and but for the time that I got home at night. And so just like I'd written on SIF all those years, I didn't have the time. And then this last year, I've had the time. I've jumped back in, and let me tell you, I'm happy again in my life. I am happy for where I am, what I'm able to do, rejoin that community. And it's always been about, not necessarily about so much the machines itself, it's been about the community that there is, the brain trust that of the people that have been involved. And I don't want to, in fact, I want to accent a little bit of even what Louis Oland has done for us, for going through and having, and I even tried to host, Louis at one point had his pages hosted. There's a big part of SIF where you'll see say, that he uses the 2001 A Space Odyssey. He'll say, Dave can't open the pod bay doors. He couldn't FTP into my domain. And that's something I still have to resolve with my provider, that I've gone through a lot of the FTP settings, and I realize that nowadays it's really tightened down for security. But going through and just having the ability to anonymous FTP and set up some other FTP that will help in the collaboration of channel content and things like that. But I want to, I mean, Lewis is ultimately has been a lot of the glue that has held things together, or he was the, collected all that material of what we wrote and everything else, wrote it up in web page format and got it established. And the what I see now in people, and the big part of the industry is, or the PC. Let's talk about vintage PCs for a moment. I'm also a member of the vintage PC enthusiast group on Facebook, and the moderator there, Ryan, has come over to the groups that I'm also on for the PS2s and things like that as well. And that's a great group of people, and bunch of people going through, numbering in the thousands of, and they've had to go through and just in the modern time to spin off the buy and sell aspect off into another group, but to just keep the discussion focused on vintage PCs. And it's focused on the PC aspect, and now even can go up to the Core Duos, and Windows 7, since it's end of life, is fair game. But a lot of the people there, men and women, the hobbyists, a common thing that they like to do is they want to get back to the computer that they grew up with, that they had as teenagers. And for me, that's the VIC-20 and Commodore 64. A latchkey kid. I came home from school and playing games on the computer, and that's what got me into the little bit of the basic programming. And we traded diskettes within the community with other individuals, several individuals that had VIC-20s and VIC-30s. I went through and I had a Sargon 3 chess cartridge, and I would play at least one chess game every day. And over time, I had one win. No, I had 2 wins, 1 draw, and the computer game won all the rest for me putting it at the highest setting of for chess for the system to beat me. And I just liked going through and challenging myself and learning chess, interfacing to a computer, playing against a computer. And I wasn't any chess master level or anything like that, but it gave me a lot of things. I work with Sudoku. I do a lot of Sudoku now, just to challenge my mind a little bit as well. And I'll get to the gaming aspect in a moment as well. As I say, the people that are on that vintage PC group, they want the computer that they grew up with, and so they're going through and collecting, maybe even the Packard Bells or some other model, some fairly unique, and they like it to have the same appearance and the same functionality level that they had as teenagers. And of course, a lot of what they had as teenagers wasn't IBM PS2s, because those were in the businesses. That's a different sort of system. I went down, and this is probably early, it had to be like maybe 90, 92, 93 time frame. Went down to El Paso, Texas to upgrade my father's business, and he advanced me all the money says, here's whatever you need. Go out and buy a system that'll work for us. And we had a 286 system at that time that had 4 megabyte of RAM on it, that I'd dip RAM that I'd put on there over time to run Windows 3.0 and a program that the Xerox dealership ran. It was like a tabbed notebook that you'd go through and flip pages for the various aspects. And it was so resource intensive and would just kill the performance of a system. So I was tasked with going through and finding like a 46 level of system for the business to replace that 286 level, to just be able to get into Windows 3.1 and some of the direction that they were going through there. And that was even still a dial-up connection at that time, of course. There's nothing, so fast. And but I went to Computer City, another name of the time. And they did have, I think it's probably like a Model 57. And I don't even think it was an Ultimedia style. And it was probably, in retrospect, it's probably an 85 57 that they had on a demo table. And that thing, I think, was over $2,000 retail, probably just for the system. And I thought, well, I'd love to buy that IBM system. Nobody ever got fired. I don't know how my dad would have looked at it, but nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, Cisco, whatever kind of mentality. But it was a little bit out of the price range that I had. I realized I had to get that performance. And that was during the Clone Wars. And I, as a veteran of the Clone Wars of that time, the computer clones, of that stripping a system down to the bare minimum. And but I went to a strip mall place, and it was the used car salesman of the computers, a guy probably in his 20s or whatever else, likely even younger than me, but going through and showing the offerings. And I even got I think I originally had a 46 DX33, and it was put in a case, and I still have that case here in the back behind my little partition here. And of the things I noticed later or figured out in time is it had a PS2 Model 30 power supply that was shoehorned into the case. Wasn't designed, in other words, it wasn't an equal fit as just an AT power supply. You actually had to they had to refab the case to fit that Model 30 PSU, and that doesn't even have any drive connections. So they have a wiring harness in there, and they're using this 90-watt power supply. And by the label on it, it was able to, they used it even on a 46 DX2 66 motherboard that they would have, a little ISA. And that was the time of the Opti local bus junk, where they had that only, you had the display card. It looked like an ESIA slot that was only a single one in there. And but I bought that, and that was a little bit over $1,000. But it was, my point is that the corner cutting that they had to do of shoehorning that PS2 Model 30 power supply, the 8086 base model, so it had the more full-size AT plugs and everything else. And I've shown that on the Facebook group and everything else, the pictures I have of still, and that power supply is not collapsed on me. and I want to be gentle to it in a way to. I'll probably end up putting like a 386 SX board or something else in there, just to have a little generic clone that I can throw just a small hard drive on, conventional floppy drive components, just to have a clone PC as well on hand. But that gets into, in a sense, probably the first PS2 part I had. It'd be something for the channel, a question somebody could ask me, what's your first experience with PS2s? Well, it was a power supply for a Model 30 in a clone system. Now later on, and I started going through and going to a salvage computer places a couple hours away on my trips as a Navy reservist at that time, and starting to pick up some items. And I went through at the XT level, had an XT motherboard, and even the K-Pro backplane and the CPU cards. And I'd go through and assemble it and everything else. And it's even funny, at one point I had a monitor open, CRT monitor, and with that anode wire just right there and everything else. And my mom walked into the room, and she got a little bit close to the monitor side, and said, "You probably don't want to be that close. You want to take a step back. Just be careful of some of those wires." And she says, "Well, you're next to it." And I said, "But I'm on the right side of it." I'm standing away from it. But one of the things I picked up was a model, as I later learned, a Model 55SX. And I think it was even just the planer, and it was probably even what they referred to as the dead cockroach planer. That IBM had this chip that was glued upside down on the planer for just for as a engineering change fix. So those early 55SX models, that was a very commonly produced models, but those things really just had issues with them when they first came out, and IBM trying to go through and fix those things. But I had just the planer. I didn't even have anything else, even the riser for it. And one of the first eBay auctions I stumbled across, they had this seller, and he was big into just computer parts in general. Even quite a bit of feedback at that point and everything else. And he knew a little bit of this stuff. He knew what he's selling a little bit, but his job, and he had even some people working for him on the auctions, his job was selling the system, not getting into there too deep, but at least he described everything he had. He knew what he had, knew what he had to sell, knew a fair price for the components. But he had a 55SX case missing the planer and with the riser. I don't necessarily think it may have had like a diskette drive, or I don't know if it had a DBA ESD drive, but missing everything, or having everything but missing the planer. And I was just so excited. I said, "Hey, that's great. You got everything I need on this auction. I got the planer. I'm just looking for putting it in." And so that was my first more complete PS2 that got me started, as well as having. And I think over time, in fact, I'm interested in it. I sent that cockroach planer eventually to Lewis and he documented the stuff very well. But I'm almost interested in getting it back. I'd like to go through and take some high-res photos of it, for prosperity and just have it back in the items. And I've got an excess of the 55X SX separate planers and risers and even a few PSUs around, things like that, and complete systems for what I've shown on video now. And but it'd be interesting getting that old planer back sometime to bring up those memories as well. So I've discussed kind of the natures of the some of the PS2 related aspect that not necessarily those vintage computer guys are looking for, and even a lot of the members of the vintage PC enthusiast channel, they like setting up those machines to game on as well. And of course, a lot of the reaction of those members is to say, I don't like PS2s, the Microtron PS2s, because you can't get a sound card for them. You can't make them into a gaming system very easily, like I can a clone. So that's another reason those guys avoid. And I'm not those first-person shooter kind of things, or even the older games of the concept of first person shooter or actor or whatever. I'm just not very good at that, I guess, or I'm not geared at that mentality. And but I do like some of the things, the games now of the Sudoku, or the things that challenge them in mind more, that I can, to me, have a little bit more thought process to them. And I don't even get into the role-playing games of the King's Quest, or you march through the archway and have to type in what you do, or I just don't do that stuff. And the aside to that too, when we're talking about like Windows 3.0 and things like that, the game of Minesweeper, and I'm sorry I did that in real life. I was on the Navy Minesweeper as a sonarman, finding mines. And it is a little bit fun, I guess, to go through there. And I had my times where I played Minesweeper to go through, but it's a little bit too real for me in that regard, or it's trivializing the place where I was, or had done in portions of my life, and not that I have necessarily fond memories of that time. Almost killed me in a way. We almost struck a mine and would have just blown us to bits, injured me or killed me or whatever. But it's that's the nature of the gaming aspect, and that's what pulled me a little bit more into the PS2 aspect. Was I didn't necessarily have to worry about games. It was now people have asked me what I like about PS2s, and I've responded, I like the community of people that have that hobby, interacting with them, trading with them, conversing with them, discovering things with them. Not necessarily, it's not all an aspect of the machine itself, although the systems are very high quality built. The nice thing is too, on that price side, and later on with the eBay, and the prices now are just, they're crazy. People think that they're going to get $1,000 for a Sound Blaster and then still charge a shipping cost on top of it for sending it to you. But it's nice in some of the more expensive options. That Model 57 that was displayed at Computer City, I've got some models that are that level and above for now. And in some cases, I got those systems for close to free. And even saying for one system, and this was this is an 8556 unit, I think. It was like it's a fairly nice system. It was like a SLC2 or SLC3 46. And I made a recent comment. When I went back and looked through CIF, I think I paid $15 for it, or $10 for it, and another $15, under $15 to ship it to me. And the joke is also, as I may have shown with when I went over the Model 56 and 57, the Model 56, you could protect the front and back, the front bezel and the back of the case, but you could just about wrap shipping paper around it and ship it that way. And they're heavy little units too, but the case is just heavy steel, and rather than enclose it in a box, you could almost ship it that way. But of course, shipping is a big concern for us in that regard nowadays, to get a system that is as functional as what we've seen and saving that away. But I got in at the right time in a sense, and if people want to know my drive too, as far as there's the people that they want to get in there and they want to store as original, and they'll even have it'll put them into a quandary, and they'll say, hey, I'm rebuilding the system, has a teenager, and I've got a 16-speed CD-ROM drive, but that's not period appropriate for that model. Help me find a 2x or 4x CD-ROM drive to put in there instead, so I can be more period specific. And with me, I'm my approach on the IBM stuff, the PS2s, but also other models, is I'm more of a retro upgrade, retrofitting, putting a faster part on there, keeping things original, keeping the original planer or something like that, not going through and replacing it with a third-party planer necessarily to make it like a sleeper system, but going through and upgrading the parts or the knowledge that we've gained or the little tricks to go in there, the tweaks to make that perform a little bit better, or have a modern equivalent that's needed. In that some cases that may come down to like a solid state drive that has to be put on there to replace functionality that is broken or is now better. And the diskette drives, is a very popular thing, and I need to get back into it, of the Gotek, to replace the diskette drive that are just so failing on us so much. And not that I'm not going to be concerned about showing even repair videos to gain in there and gain those drives functional again, things like that. But I look at the alternatives that we have now. Of course, the real big news is people developing microchannel adapters, which is absolutely fabulous. Finally making those sound cards, whether, and getting into, hopefully getting into the Sound Blaster compatible level as well, to just a good general purpose sound card that can be it's not too expensive to put on there. And I encourage those people that are developing things, and I'm actually trying to get set up as part of the community to where we may have people that are not as familiar with microchannel. They're looking to develop stuff, and they have the mad skills to go through and to do that. But they don't have the machines. They don't have maybe some adapters are looking for, some parts or pieces or something else. and I'm trying to get into get the community developed, that we have members around that can go through and, if you want to develop for a PS2, we can get you set up with a machine. We can get one in your hands. We can give that cheerleading to and knowledge to try and help you in your development, and make it so it's something that we gain all together. But that's not a limitation as far as we're concerned. If somebody needs a system, we can get one in our hands. And I was thinking even today, I need to get on and make the post on the. We also have a Facebook group of the in search of, buying, selling, or in search of particular microchannel parts, related parts, and and that address a little bit more complex. The general purpose PS2 Facebook group is facebook.com/groups, plural, GROUPS /CSIPH, or SIF, just like it is for the news group. That acronym, CSIPH, and go to it. And I see the the question. A lot of time we have membership questions. If I recognize the name, or I see shared groups that I participate on, or I see enough background to know that I'm just not inviting a spammer into our group, I'll go through and I can approve you very quickly. But answer the questions, even as an answer to the question, to say, hey, IBM Museum sent me, and we can get you on the group. We can get you in the community. I've also got a side platform that I'm trying to split off. It's a development area, hardware and software, and that's different projects that I've thought of, and I need to go through and populate it a lot better. And I need to go through and announce a lot better. And I need to go through and get people into the appropriate groups by request. And I say that that's a development area. And if you're in a project, you want to be involved in a particular project, which you can do easily on request. But I say you're not going to be a looky-loo in there. You're not going to just because you want to see what's going on. I want to get, and it can be as simple as you having the ideas that might help that project, not necessarily that you may know how to code, or you may need to solder or anything like that. But I do want participants for those projects to be in there in that community, to be able to collaborate with others, to where we can get needed things in a crowdsource effort to get functional items out there, and to help our community, and that can even be 3D printing of drive rails or sleds or bezels or things like that for those projects. It's not all just a thing like that. So that's another thing, and as I go through, and I need to announce that and get that more known about. I'm also trying to develop my own site, which has just remained dormant for so long, if anybody ever sees it. And I've finally got it set up to where I can start in a blog aspect of to support the channel as well, of going through and saying what I'm working on, what the next video up may be, or to even give me ideas. So, hey, you should do a video on this, you should do a video on that. And that's the trouble sometimes. There's so much content that can be done. on that stuff. But you know, I want that feedback as well a lot of the time in what can help the community, because that's my intent, is to take the hobby further. Even the recent video on the system information tool, I've been amazed that that's gone through and been disassembled, as it were, or information extracted over it on the malls covered and everything else. And that opens up so many possibilities for going through and looking at that software, and so many spin-off videos that can be done from that, follow-up videos of series to address certain aspects. And it's a snapshot in time, in effect, from IBM. And I'll probably do I'm probably going to do a follow-up video on that. This is probably good for video content for tonight. I did intend to try and start doing a video per day, although that kind of got upset by the headset microphone and everything else. And I don't know, this one, I mean, the audio is just not as good. It's clipped. And, you know, sometimes we can even talk about, I'll go off topic and talk about modern technology. And I talked about on that video where the earlier ones I had with these that had the blue rings on the side on the earpieces, otherwise functional equivalent, was fabulous. So I could walk hundreds of feet away from it, and it outside the building it would play. This one is just, I get 5 feet from the system and I start getting static for what's in the speakers. I don't know, you know, the microphone probably clips a little bit. You can definitely, the quality from the Logitech aspect, and I think the price is about the same, but the quality just went downhill. Now, I don't know if it's these individual ones or what. Now, in the other regard, as I say, I'm not just focused on the older systems. There'll be a little bit of new content in there. Of course, the big story was back when for us was Lenovo going through and buying off the IBM systems and getting that piecemeal from IBM, to where you know, the ThinkPads and other things were the last things to go, and that was after the PS2 lines and even series that afterwards had been released. But that was the thing, and had the impact in, of course, American government, that Lenovo, being a Chinese company, of how secure those systems were, that they had used IBMs for years, and if they were going to go through and switch over to Lenovo, or just take that as face value, you know, for all the security aspects. But I followed through on some of the systems I have around of Lenovo, and even the other day I had some of the ThinkCenters, and I have the IBM version of the ThinkCenter, that little tiny unit with the flip lid and everything else. And then I've got some later ones, and that's a Pentium 4. And now I've got some later ones that of the ThinkCenter that are later models, but same styling under the Lenovo brand. And it's been an easy transfer for me to go from IBM to Lenovo. And of course, Lenovo, I mean, they go in directions sometimes or whatever. And you've seen this flash by. I wanted to bring up that this is my go-to system these days. And I don't even think they produce these anymore. And this is a replacement for one that lasted me a good long 4 years. But it's the model of this is a C330 Lenovo Chromebook. And I'm a big Chrome OS enthusiast as well. I see my picture going as it tries to do the autofocus for having that in front of me. But if I need to quickly get online or do anything, even gain on SIF, gain on Facebook, whatever, getting on my email aspects. This is the system I latch a hold of because I know within a matter of seconds it's booted up and I'm online. And this converts over to a tablet as well. So it fully rotates. It does have the keyboard on the back side when it's in tablet mode. And I rarely use it as a tablet or tent mode. I can use it in the tent mode sometimes for that teleprompter program application extension on it. And which it works very well in that mode. And it's a touch screen, small IPS screen, which is just a fabulous quality. And I mean, it's small. It's not a big resolution. Sometimes I have to put on my reading glasses to see it, but that's my go-to system a lot of the time. And so there may even be topics on that Chrome OS and, not necessarily how the Lenovo's had theirs as well, along with the this Chromebook style for some of the other ones, but that's going to be some aspects I'm going to touch on. Now, I was glad for this, and I'm going to go through just to. I don't know at what point I'll wrap this up. I've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. I'll probably go an hour and 30 at very most, and we just can go and replay for the idea of what I wanted here. And so as part of the channel as well, and I have to remember, this is my mom's paper. I need to get it into her eventually as well. I was using that as a prop for showing the date. But, along with the channel, I'm also trying to explain that I'm trying to vary the content. It can seem like sometimes on the videos that, man, you do a video on one thing and then you kind of shoot off on a tangent and do it somewhere else, or maybe it's a little bit of a follow-up, but you've gone off in a different direction. You haven't stuck with that series. You haven't done the follow-up video. And all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to vary my content a little bit for the target audience, in the thought that I want to throw this channel out there in so many different ways that pulls people in for interested in the talk. And I hemmed and hawed on how long I could be, or that IBM mainframe or mini computer side of, would I have to bring up a terminal up here and do a video on it, and without it connected into a mini computer to get a good display on it or anything else, of going through and having some actual content there. And so I kind of struggle with that because I want to address the mainframe and mini computer aspects as well. And we had a lot of time, the PS2s, they were able to be host for those aspects, or host an emulation board. You made your fancy expensive computer into a cheap terminal. But I did want to show, and I'll make sure I'm not getting sparks around or anything else. I'm going to show that glorious P370 adapter again, and even look at the P390 card is even a lot more elaborate and everything else too. But wanted to show that for the purposes of the video, and I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not trying to be contentious again. Just wanting to show that I am in physical possession of this adapter. I have the host systems that I can put this on to operate, but I need, the license code, and we have to be very careful in how IBM views that IP. But intellectual property, licensing, anything else. I would hope that you know, you have the IBM CEO out there, or the whoever is in control of that, retains the rights. Because I don't think that IBM sold off those licensing rights to Lenovo. But if I can have a face-to-face chat with anyone at IBM to say, we're just trying to have this as a hobby. We're trying to go through and show this off to other people of this fabulous devices or things that we find intriguing, and just show those to people. We're not looking at uh, making money so much off of it or anything else. It's a hobby, and we're not going to, and we'll treat that licensing appropriately, that at least that's running on IBM equipment, and it's for the benefit of the community, and furthering the good name that IBM has out in the world, in showing that stuff off, so that they could be relaxed a little bit. Those meat-eating lawyers don't go after us about that licensing, and that they stay friendly, and they realize that our intentions. Now, probably as a good close, like I say, I'm probably trying to stay under that minute, and that hour and a half mark. The origin of my IBM Museum moniker is years ago. When I've gone through and had those systems, and my intent originally with the PS2s and other, I have the PC series stuff as well. I've got a lot of the PC server, later units and everything else. My intent originally was to have one complete working unit of each model and submodel type that was out there. Not go down to the nitty gritty, but the major models and submodels that were out there. Having one complete unit, representative unit that works, was functional. And then the separate parts, mainly in also the planar, the main board of the system, as a display. And I've even traded in the past with people that they said, "Hey, I've got a bad board. It looks fine, but it doesn't work." And I've worked out arrangements where I said, "Okay, that's a good display board for me. I don't care, as long as it's visually complete. I'll mail you a good board, and you can send that one to me, and I have my display board, and you have you're able to get through and get a working system again." And as I say, my post today was about to be to go on that microchannel buy, sell, and search of, and say, I'm actually looking for non-functional boards from PS2s. I did the other day I dumped a few more BIOS ROM chips for the SCSI level, and got those into files. But my intent there is, I've got my Bermuda boards around here somewhere. I might just grab another one. Is it good? Oh God. Well, I can grab another board as a I'm looking for a good example of what I'm meaning. You can hear the singing of the air compressor in the background as I step around. You might hear that over the mic, but I'm thinking, and this is good, top quality board. This is a 46 SLC3 I featured on the video. Nice fast CPU for a 16-bit system. And I just put in the coprocessor as I went over the video. But in this example, even though I have this SCSI microcode captured from one of the versions of this board that has this as a socketed chip, this one's soldered in place. And I'm looking for those, maybe a defunct board that still has a, if I don't have that BIOS or that code of that chip, to be able to go through in that defunct board and remove that chip, sacrifice it for the ability to read that in my EEPROM reader and get that code published online and everything else, so that somebody would be able to reproduce that chip in their system, plug it in case that had a bug fix or a improvement or whatever. But in that concept of replacing or getting to the level of all the EEPROMs that I'd like to get for those. But and so I'll make that offer. But and that was almost the same thing. If I had a working version of a board and somebody has a defunct version with something I'm looking for in those chips or whatever, there might even be arrangements that we can get a functional board back in your hands, replacing that that defunct board. Because otherwise, for me to gain those chips, and the Bermuda Mall was the next one I got to look at, because all the and I do have enough spare planers there, and those are likely all functional. But to get that microcode version for the SCSI controller, I'm gonna have to sacrifice one of those boards most likely. I can probably solder the chip back on there afterwards. But in the removal method, it's going to be involved, and I'd rather go through and sacrifice a board that's not going to be functional again, and at least have somebody able to use that functionality. And so, like I say, I might be able to do a trade, so I don't have to dip in and violate that rule. But getting back to the topic, and I've shot over what I said the time I would allot for this. So I'm getting ready to wrap this up fairly quickly, get it in replay to where people can go through and watch it again. But I had all the systems in my basement, and had an elderly lady, and she didn't really have any affiliation with computers, or probably didn't even get into that stuff, but came by visiting for something else. And I said, well, let's give you the grand tour, because she expressed a little bit of interest in seeing what I had. And as she came down the steps to the basement, where I had all the systems up, on the in very organized placement for storage, she says it looks like an IBM museum in here. And that was a matter of decades ago. I said, that I kind of like the lyrical sound of that IBM museum, and that's the moniker I've used. Now I've had discussions with friends, and a lot of times that I go through and introduce myself on the channel, say, hey, this is IBM Museum, and I don't know if anybody's necessarily put off for that by that, or that's endearing or whatever else. I've not necessarily tried to hide my name. Certainly anyone with any investigative skills and the seen it flash back by and everything else, or can get a quick idea of who that is anyway. But I say that because the internet is a different place now, and unfortunately there's people out there that can go through, and that's what they look for. They look for interfering with your lives, with your channel. In fact, right after I started the channel, within a matter of a couple weeks. I knew it would be possible, or it opened me up. I had Google report a hacking attempt with someone trying to go through and take control of my Google identity on YouTube. They said, "Hey, we've seen a hacking attempt, so strengthen your password." And that has had the impact on me that I did indeed strengthen my password. I go through secure passwords anyway, but by their recommendation, I changed it, and it's prevented the Chrome browser on my Windows XP systems is still functional, but it's not updated, so I can't update my password on there. So I can't fully sync with that on my Google account on those systems. It tells me to upgrade my Chrome when I try and do that. And of course, that's not possible anymore. So I'm caught in the Google catch-22 that I can't synchronize fully on that system to my Google account unless I put in my new password, but I can't put my new password in there because I don't have a modern version of the browser. So thank you for that, whoever organization or individual out there that tried to hack into my channel. I don't have any skeletons in my closet. I'm sorry. There's not going to be anything that you're going to hold over me or extort me somehow by anyone that feels that they can attempt that. But I have to go through and do safeguards. You just can't reveal your location hardly anymore. And I've been a target of that. I've had people try and publicly say where I live, allege that they, were outside my household or on the street and taking pictures of me and my family or whatever. And that's a scary side of things. And that's the only reason I go through. I want the internet to be a friendly community. I've worked with the international community of friends for years and had no worry about on that international stage of anyone's intent, but I've got to go through for what the environment is now on the internet. That's just a sad reality of our current society. My shirt says, "I used to be a people person until people ruined it." And that's the only reason sometimes I'm defensive or look at that aspect. But it's time to go through and to wrap this up to a close. I do appreciate I'm up to like 3 viewers now. And hopefully a lot more people will see this in replay to see if they want to watch me just rambling on, talking about things. And my finishing comment is, I do welcome input. I do even what can be maybe even abrasive criticism. I'm going to take that and I'm going to work on that. I'm going to treat that as at face value to be able to react. If someone sees an issue in a particular thing, I'm going to try and respond. So I always welcome comments. I always welcome people responding to me to say, "Hey, I'd like to see this," and I've done this before. I'd like to see a video on this, and I've been able to react to that. And I can try and remain flexible, and it's not going to be formal. It's not going to be a processed product necessarily, but we'll react to that. And as I say, I'll show what I need to show. I'll say what I need to say of the knowledge I may have had on particular items, and try and give a little bit of insight and help, or just that. And it's a great community out there to get involved with. I know that there's a lot of people out there that do enjoy this content, and I'm at this point. I realize I have to give it a little bit of time the channels that have the high number of subscribers of at least a few thousand would be a good number. I realize it takes a time to get to that point, and I've got to be a little bit more patient and everything else. But I'm trying to throw a lot of content out there just to get a notice and get people pointed to the right direction, because we have and we have a little bit of a brain trust, and an issue that I do see, um, us old timers that have been around, um, we've learned all the other and interacted with all those other old timers, but the fact is we're aging. We're getting up to the point where um, it's a little bit of time to pass the torch. It's a little bit of to get younger people involved, to get contributions, to get people that are interested in this hobby, and the more the merrier of going in there, of learning things. And the benefit our community is going to offer is on that regard, just as I kind of almost opened with, of what Louis Olin and other things have done for us. And the joke is, a lot of people out there say, I don't like microchannel bus. And I even saw a video the other day of an article from Hackaday. And I'll probably cover this in channel. It's talking about hacking the ISA and PCI bus. And they're talking about basically the adding adapters of those interfaces, the retrofitting aspect, the development aspect. And they briefly mentioned microchannel, but they kind of skirt all over the top. And as I say, people, when they say, I don't like a PS2 because I'm not able to get a microchannel sound card. But I also see references to the ESIA, the reaction of the group of 9 or whatever it was, Compaq and all that went in there and developed ESIA as a response to improving the ISA bus, but not going microchannel and into the licensing with IBM over that. And that had some of its communities, and it probably still does. I may not be aware of some of them out there, but I've seen that represented, and I've always come back on the ESI side to say, a system today, give me a random microchannel adapter. I can get online, I can find the ADF for that in a matter of seconds. If there's an ADF that was out there for it, I know where to find that quickly. You give me a random ESIA card adapter, the hunt for that config file, it's going to be a problem to me. I'm not going to be able to locate that as quickly. Maybe if it's out there and even put online at one point, that repository is gone now. And IBM used to host the needed files and everything else, of course, back in the day. And we realized at the time that would eventually go away. And we siphoned that stuff up and we cached it away. We saved all that away. There's maybe not efforts on other interfaces on computers to save that data away. You could even look at the modern equivalent of PCI, when PCI was young, for some of those adapters out there. Help me find that software for that video capture card or something like that. Microchannel in that regard, and IBM PS2s have aged well in that regard because of that community over time. And certainly we welcome new development in that regard. We welcome those new those attempts at making an adapter, sound card, or whatever else for PS2 for adapting a hardware, like a hard drive interface. the microchannel system, where IDE is not that standard, or solid state media, SCSI to SD, or IDE to SD adapters. So we welcome all that. We welcome the new blood. We want to give the pointers to those people that may not realize out there they have this adapter, and so I'm trying to put this on the machine, and man, I'm having issues and I can't get this working right. That there's a good chance that we've discussed that adapter, we've gone through, and now even developing solutions for some of that stuff, and even discovering 20 years later, 30 years later, aspects of the PS2s that were obscured or hidden away, not necessarily revealed by IBM, that are coming to light, that we're able to improve the systems in some regard. Even works to rewrite BIOS of some machines. Think about some of that, where the age we're in now, that what we can do, to have those machines remain functional and everything else. But that is what I have. That's where it's a good point that I can wrap up this very informal and put together very quickly this video, and what it turned into a little bit of my talk of the channel. And maybe I need to do this a little bit more often. And certainly it was hard preparing. I had to track down the headset and everything else. I don't know if I necessarily want to pull out of this bag. There is the P370 adapter for me, and this is proof that we need the code to get that running. That was the supposed to be the topic for this adapter, for this video. But thank you for all the viewers, and I'll go through, and I'll in the playback version, I'll provide links to into the Facebook groups and other places where I'm at, as well as to get the viewers to see that. And even if you didn't catch this live, maybe you'll catch the next one as well. And it gave me a little inroad into touching on the mainframe and mini computer, IBM big iron systems, of how I could have a video relating to that. So this has been a great opportunity for me. Just shoot from the hip, and I'll roll with things and produce a video on it. So that's all I have for now. Thank you for watching. This is IBM Museum. Bye.